G'day, welcome to Bradley's Bakehouse, where today we're going to be making scrolls. We're going to get a little bit sweet with a custard and apple scroll, and we're going to get more than a little bit savory with a Vegemite and cheese one. Stick around, this one's going to be good. Okay, cheese and Vegemite scrolls. In the interest of full disclosure, I have made fucking thousands of these things. I went to this super bougie bakery in Melbourne and really top shelf patisserie, like pan suisse, fucking from scratch croissant, lemon meringues, strawberry tarts, every kind of tart that you could imagine. And a few had sold from each, and then in the corner there's a half devoured tray of Vegemite scrolls. Every bakery sells these things, and for good reason. They're amazing. Anyway, the ingredients for today: we're using Lighthouse's bread and pizza flour, 11.9% protein, good enough for what we need for this. We're using Lowen's Whole Foods instant yeast, just throw it in, no blooming, nothing like that. We're using bread improver. This is a collection of enzymes and vitamins and stuff that just sort of spur yeast on and make yeast behave more consistently and better. We've got salt, we've got some water that's just a little bit below room temperature with a few drops of vegetable oil in it for softness. And then for our filling, of course, we've got the mighty Vegemite, and we've got a 250 gram block of supermarket brand tasty cheese that we've grated ourselves. You're lucky I grated it myself. 9 bakeries out of 10 use pre-grated stuff. I went the extra mile for this. Okay, so the recipe for this white dough is the exact same as the white dough that we used in the first video. We made a sandwich loaf and a few rolls and stuff like that, and it's the same dough that we used in the pull-apart video as well. So if you watch those two, you'll be pretty familiar with this by now. We're gonna put our dough hook on, we're gonna throw our flour in, our improver and our yeast. Then we're gonna put our water in, water and oil, I should say. And we're gonna hold back our salt, right? Because what we're gonna do is we're gonna mix this, we're gonna get it combined, and then we're gonna do a quick little 10 to 15 minute fermentolyse to develop a little bit of extra gluten while it sits and hydrates. So I'm gonna pull this down now. I'm gonna mix this on the slowest speed for about 3 minutes or so. I'm gonna plug it in, and then I'm gonna mix it on the slowest speed. Okay, so after 3 minutes, our ingredients are just combined. That's gonna sit there and hydrate a bit more, and through the fermentolyse process, we're gonna develop a little bit of gluten. We're gonna cover this with a plate and just leave it untouched for about 10 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes, and in that time, our dough has gone from shaggy mess to actually being quite stretchy and having a little bit of gluten going on there. Hey, it's the magic fermentolyse trick, at it again. Now we're gonna add in the salt that we held back before, and we're gonna bring this down, we're gonna bring our dough hook down, we're gonna mix it on slow for about 1 minute just to get that salt dispersed, and then we're gonna crank it back up to about a medium speed and knead it for about, I'm gonna say 8 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 8 minutes, and our dough is window paning really beautifully. What we're gonna do, we're gonna take this nice dough and we're gonna boule this up. Nice tight boule. And we're gonna take it, we're gonna drop it back in the bowl of our stand mixer, and we're gonna cover it with a plate. We're gonna let this do its first rise. It's probably gonna take about 40 minutes, and then we're gonna punch it down. We'll get it rolled out nice and flat, we'll fill it, and then we'll scroll it. Okay, so it's been about 40 minutes. Our dough has just about doubled in size, or has doubled in size. We're just gonna very gently degas this. So we're just gonna scoop our hand around the edge like that and sort of tuck it into itself, not just punch it down mindlessly, like some kind of beast. Now, for turning something into a scroll, the first thing that we need to do is turn it into a rectangle. I'm very much a believer in that you should cut all your pieces of a scroll from a singular rolled up piece, so that's what I'm gonna do. It's what I've always done. It's how I was shown to do it. The easiest way to start this, I believe personally, is by using your fingers to push it out into quite a rigid looking rectangle. Like this. A little bit more flour. The flour is mostly needed on the bottom, I've found. This is it's not a dry dough, but it's also not a wet dough. So it should be fairly easy for you to handle. I'm gonna take a rolling pin, a little bit of flour on top to stop the pin from sticking. And I like to personally go corner to corner like this. And then once you do all 4, lay it back down, even her out, and then corner to corner again. And that's about it, really. We want it to be, that's a pretty good length. We want to get 6 scrolls out of this one. So this is a 600 gram piece of dough. and we want to get 6 scrolls out of it. So 100 grams per scroll. I think that's personally, if we think about rolling this up and how it's going to look when it's rolled up, we want about 3 fingers per scroll. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the last one will be 6. So we're just going to roll it out just a little bit wider. Just not much, just like a little bit wider, making sure it's like fairly even. There we go. It's going to get our holy Australian condiment. For those of you who don't know what this is, by the way, this is like a yeast byproduct that is incredibly popular in Australia. It is everywhere, it is all over Australian media. If there is an Australian cameo in something, fucking 9 times out of 10, they're gonna mention Vegemite. It's just it's a thing. It's part of who we are. I don't really know how to describe how it tastes apart from, like, it's an incredibly umami rich like thing. It's kind of a bit like miso on steroids. It's very salty. It like works its way into like a lot of barbecue sauces and stuff like that somehow. For spreading this, the easiest method that I found is to sort of like fluff it up a little bit with a scraper. Just like sort of whip it out and get like a thin layer of it. And then just spread it on there. Don't need to be shy. That was an arbitrary amount that I grabbed. It was probably about a tablespoon. And I actually think this is probably gonna do it, to be honest. You don't wanna go super overboard, but you also don't want to be a coward with it. Yeah, I would actually say that I nailed that, if I'm super honest. That's a Vegemite, just a nice, even, thin layer. Make sure you get all the way out to the edges. Nothing's worse than getting a scroll and you got an edge piece with nothing on it. And we're gonna get our grated cheese. Like I said earlier, a lot of these that I've made in like a commercial environment have been with pre-grated cheese. I'm not gonna sit here and say that there's something magical about that and that you need to use pre-grated cheese. It's more expensive, so I bought a block of cheese and grated it myself. But I guess we'll find out if that's some like secret thing, because thinking back now, I don't think I have ever made a cheese and Vegemite scroll without pre-grated, like specifically tasty cheddar. Like the big like 1 kilo bags. Anyway, I'll stop narrating weird shit from my life. Our cheese is on here. I like to give it like a little press down. It just stops it from flying around when we're actually scrolling it. But just like a nice thin layer. I think where people really go wrong with scrolls is they like overstuff them and then they can't like pull them together and it's just a fucking mess and no one has a good time and you never want to do it again because you've done a terrible job. It's very specific, but that's because I've done that before. So when it comes to scrolling, all we need to do is take this corner, right, and just sort of tuck it a bit like a seam, a bit like we're doing a seam on like a loaf or something like that. And then we just want to sort of roll it very, very lightly. We're just using sort of these sort of joints on our fingers. We're just rolling it towards ourselves, making sure that seam goes under. And then every so often we're pulling it out and stretching it. So pull it towards us, push out, pull it towards us. Pull it towards us, push out, pull it towards us. And the key here, the key thing that we really want is to get this nice and even. We want it nice and even, and we want like a few layers. We want to cut into this sort of thing, and we want to like see like dough, Vegemite cheese. Like, it's kind of like we want to see the layers. So that there, I would probably say I'm quite happy with, right? So that's just a log. This is just a log of Vegemite and cheese. One thing that I am gonna do is just nip the very end pieces off because of the way we shape it. They're probably just dough anyway. I want 6 scrolls from this. I want 6 scrolls. So make them a little bit more generous. 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. I'm happy with that size. I think that's a good size. This is the sharpest scraper that I have. It is a metal scraper. You saw this is a plastic scraper. Don't use a plastic scraper. It'll dodgy it up. Use this or use a knife even. Maybe put it on a cutting board, but use a knife. And you're just gonna quick, decisive motion down and then towards you, right? And if we look at this now, see? We've got dough, Vegemite cheese, right? That's exactly what we want. Down towards you. You can sort of pinch it together to give it like a little bit more down towards you. 1, 2, 3. Yep, cool. Now, I personally believe with savory scrolls, they shouldn't form into each other. So they shouldn't proof up, and when they spring, they shouldn't bake, and they shouldn't become like a single sheet of scrolls. I personally think savory scrolls should be like individual units. I have absolutely no basis for why I think that. I just think it looks nicer. When we do our custard and apple scroll, you'll see that I'm gonna bake them into sort of one more cohesive sort of unit that's then gonna get pulled apart. I just think it makes a lot more sense with sweet scrolls than it does with savory scrolls. So here are our 6 Vegemite scrolls. These are gonna be nice and tall, nice and strong, nice big boys. And you can see in each one, we've got those layers: dough, Vegemite, cheese, dough, Vegemite, cheese. Gonna give these 40-ish minutes now, and then we're gonna top them with cheese, and then we're gonna get them in the oven and get them baked and make the whole house smell amazing. Okay, so it's been about 45 minutes and our cheese and Vegemite scrolls have proofed up very nicely. I'm just gonna hit them with like the finishing touch now, which is just like a little bit of extra grated cheese over the top, just like whatever we had left from that block. It was a 250 gram block, so there should be some left over. And just whatever we've got left of that, we're just gonna top them with it. Now, our oven's preheated to about 230 degrees, and I've got a cast iron skillet preheated on the shelf below where I'm gonna put these. We're going to use a steam injection when we bake this. Now, if you've watched any of the previous videos that I've made about bread baking, I've used a steam injection on pretty much everything. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put these into the oven, and then we're gonna pour about a cup of boiling water into that cast iron skillet and close the door. That's going to make the environment within the oven very humid, and it's gonna prevent the crust of like the bread component of these scrolls from hardening over, allowing them to fully expand and become as fluffy as they can be. So we're going to dump that boiling water in there, close the door, and then at 3 30-second intervals, we're gonna open the door and we're gonna spray the back and sides with water from a spray bottle. Now, this is optional, especially with something like this is optional, but I do think it does increase the quality of the product that you're making. It is, I understand, quite a lot of work, but I think it's worth it, personally. One thing to make sure that you do is to cover the oven door with a tea towel. If you get any water on there, it can shatter and it will really ruin your day. I cannot stress that enough. Do not forget the tea towel. After our bursts of steam, we're gonna drop the oven temperature to about 200 degrees, and we're gonna let this go. We're gonna let this bake for about 20 minutes. It's probably gonna take closer to 30, but we're gonna start checking it at 20 minutes. Half an hour later, we're pulling our Vegemite scrolls out of the oven. Ah! Have a look at these boys. This is always gonna be such like a quintessential part of like working in bakeries in Australia. I remember on my first day at TAFE, my first ever day at TAFE, where we just did white dough, we made these because they were like, saddle up y'all, these are in your future. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. See how like those nice layers and like the tops kind of popped out like a little bit, enough that you can tell that it's a scroll under all the melted cheese. Oh, that's really hot. Now these are super easy to make. They're super easy to make and they're super cheap to make. One of the biggest markups on a product in a bakery would be the cheese and Vegemite scrolls. One of the best things about them, and something that I think a lot of people would agree on, is that these boys are best enjoyed warm. I normally like to pick out the ugly one for this bit, but there isn't really an ugly one, is there? Let's cut that down the middle. Let's see the cross section. Yeah, buddy. That's what we're after. The wild thing is, I ate one of these for breakfast probably like 5 days a week for nearly 2 years, and I'm still not sick of them. This is how you convert people to Vegemite. It's not by giving them like slathering a fucking stale piece of tip-top sunblock. It's not that, it's something like this. This is how you get people to like Vegemite. Okay, so for our custard and apple scroll, we're gonna make a really simple sweet bun dough. We're gonna be using Lighthouse's bread and pizza flour again. We're gonna be using Lowen's instant yeast, a little bit of butter that's been softened, it's nice and room temperature, some sugar and some salt. For our filling, we're gonna make a really simple custard out of some instant custard powder. Just go with me on this one. Some milk, and then we're gonna layer it with some tinned Pink Lady apples that we've like strained and dried just a little bit. And then right at the end, we're gonna make a very simple but very, very tasty maple syrup glaze out of some maple syrup, some icing sugar, and some butter that we're gonna melt, and then we're gonna top the whole thing with some crushed pecans. And it's gonna be delicious. Okay, so we're gonna make the sweet white dough for our custard and apple scrolls. So in goes flour, sugar, salt, yeast, the water that I forgot to mention 2 seconds ago, and our butter. Now you might notice that I added everything in this time. I didn't hold back the salt to do my usual fermentolyse trick with this. That is because this is only 58% water, and the lower a hydration in a dough is, the quicker the gluten will develop. I also added all of my butter in at the start. If you were making something that was like really rich, like something that was like, you know, 12, 15, 20% butter, you'd want to add that butter in slowly. Because this is only 8% butter, there's no real problem with adding it all in at the start. So we're gonna knead this slowly for probably about 3 minutes, and then at a medium speed for probably about 8. Right, so it's been about 8 minutes of fast kneading there. This dough is plenty developed for a sweet bun dough, I feel. So I'm gonna turn this into a nice little boule, and I'm gonna drop it back in our bowl, cover it with a plate, and we will allow that 40 minutes to rise. While we do that...
I don't understand.
Oh! I know why you don't understand, it's because I wasn't speaking to you. And while that's rising, we're gonna make our custard. Okay, so the making of instant custard, I imagine varies a bit from brand to brand. I'm personally just using the Coles branded one. It's very simple. I imagine they vary a bit, but I imagine they're all mostly like the same. So you add your dry ingredients, which is usually the custard powder and the sugar, into a pan, and then you add like enough of your milk to saturate it. Oh, that is a terrible pouring cup. Oh well, in for a penny, in for a pound. Oh, that's just dreadful. That was, no, we're not having this. God damn. Welcome to Bradley's Bakehouse, where we clean the fucking counter. All right. So yeah, you add like enough to saturate the dry ingredients and make like a bit of a paste. And then you start heating it. Where's it on? Cool. Manual. I love how I still don't entirely sure how to do this. And then you start gradually heating it, and then you stream more milk in as you go. I have no idea how that's gonna work with that fucking glass, but stream in some more milk. I hope you guys are seeing this. This is appalling. And there we have it. Instant custard. Now we're using instant custard for a few reasons. One is that it's amazingly stable, right? There is so many emulsifiers and stuff in this. You can do whatever you want to this and it's gonna be fine. The second is that, well, it's easy. And the third is that it's not particularly eggy tasting. It's kind of just like sweet yellow that you can sort of line with whatever fillings that you want to. But before we do any lining of anything, this needs to be properly fridge cold. Okay, so it's been about 40 minutes and our bun dough has doubled in size. We are just going to punch the gas out of that one. We're gonna roll this out very similarly to how we did the Vegemite. A little bit of flour on the table. Dough out there. We're gonna use our hands at first to get that vaguely in the shape of a rectangle. Remember, we want 6 scrolls out of this. So if we think about how thick we cut them, so we wanted them probably about 3 fingers thick, right? So a decent sized scroll, I would say. That's what I would call that. Tiny bit of flour on top, a little bit of flour underneath again. If it's stiff or it's resisting, turn it around and go from the other angle. I don't know why, but that seems to make it a little bit more susceptible to being rolled out. And I like to go corner to corner. This is a really awkward place to have this camera while I'm trying to show a different angle. I would probably go a little bit thinner. About sort of the width of the rolling pin, I guess is sort of what we're going for. That means absolutely nothing to you because you don't have this exact rolling pin. I would pretty happily say that's probably, what's that? Let me say about 30 centimeters by, you know what, where's my tape measure? Yeah, called it. That is 32 centimeters by 28. So the whole 30 centimeter thing, I wasn't quite telling stories, was I? Rightio, our custard is also nice and cool and very, as you can see, very willing to be spread. So these are just Pink Lady pieces that have been in syrup in a tin. I strained them like pretty aggressively, so there's not a whole ton of water left in these, but we're just gonna scatter these around on our scroll. Now, just like with the Vegemite, you don't, the worst thing that you can do at this stage right now, after you've gotten here, is overfill this thing. Because if you overfill it and you can't roll it up, or you can't like get clean slices, you know, it just, I always found that like a slightly underfilled scroll is better than a scroll that's like so stuffed that it's impossible to work with. And like we're throwing these big chunks in, this is already going to be a little bit more challenging than the Vegemite to roll up. The bun dough is like a lot drier and a lot more forgiving than the white dough that we used before, so it probably shouldn't be that challenging. Now for this, I'm using tinned apple purely for convenience. You could make your own, like if you made like an apple pie-esque filling with like cinnamon and stuff like that, that would be delicious in this. You could stew any apples, you could do anything. This would work really well with pears. I'm just using tinned apples because I like it, and I think it goes really well with the custard. On to scrolling, exact same procedure, exact same method as last time. We've just got these kind of like chunks of apple to contend with. So we're just gonna sort of take them as they come. If we have to grab them by the piece and fold it by the piece, so be it. It's not the end of the world. Cool. There we go. Remember, just push forward and pull back. Keep that tension nice and tight. Keep it nice and even. Even is the name of the game here. We'll try and get those ones right in there at the end. And if any bits fall out at the end, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. Don't worry about it. Cool. There we go. And there we have it, right? That one's for me. Now, just like last time, we've got this is, I think it's a quarter sheet pan with a sheet of baking paper on it prepared. We're gonna cut these about 3 fingers thick, and we wanna get 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the last one will be 6. I'm not gonna worry about trimming off the ends. I think these ends are neat enough. If you think they're neat enough, you go ahead and leave them. It's fine. Irregular shaped scrolls are fine. It's okay. Don't worry about it. So I'm gonna mark it because I'm gonna be pedantic. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that wasn't very even, was it, Aiden? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, that's a big boy. And I lied. I'm gonna snip the edge off that one. One little trick that you can do if you have like these little ends that stick out like this is just take them and just make sure you tuck them underneath the scroll. That's something that you can do as well as like pointing the edges in towards itself. Just tuck those little tails. Just tuck your tails. Just tuck them underneath the scroll itself. And you'll get a little bit neater of a presentation as it proves up. The tradition with sweet scrolls, as opposed to savory scrolls, is that they prove up and they bake into each other. And then it becomes like a big slab, and then you pull the slab apart, and then you kind of have like a square scroll. I'm going for that with this, right? So these are gonna prove up over probably about 40 minutes, and they're probably gonna prove up till they're just about or are definitely touching each other. And then when they bake, they're gonna spring a little bit more. You get the idea. These are gonna go into a nice warm place, and they're gonna proof up for about 40 minutes. And in the meantime, we're gonna preheat our oven to 230 degrees and get it ready for steaming. Okay, so it's been about 40 minutes. Our scrolls are nice and proofed up. As you can see, they are lightly touching each other. They're nice and poofy, nice and ready to roll. They're passing the poke test, very happy with these. So we're gonna get these in the oven now. We're gonna throw them in there. We're gonna do the exact same steaming method that we did with the Vegemite scrolls. Drop the temperature of the oven down to 200 and let them bake for about 20 minutes. Okay, so it's actually been a little bit closer to half an hour, but we're pulling our apple and custard scrolls out. They've got a nice sort of caramelized top. They've got a nice, clearly defined scroll. What we're gonna do now is get these off this hot baking tray and onto a cooling rack. And while they're cooling down, we're gonna prepare a very simple maple syrup glaze. Oh, they smell very good. They smell very good. So we've got some butter here that we've melted and let return to room temperature. It's gonna go in there. Some icing sugar. I'm not gonna sift it because I'm lazy. And I'm gonna do 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. Come on now. You could hand whisk this, no problem, but I'm gonna use this because I said it before, I'm lazy. That's the price that I pay. Beautiful. That right there is our maple syrup glaze. Oh my God. God bless the Canadians. Honestly, that's fucking fire. Right, so our custard and apple scrolls are nice and cool. We've got our glaze ready, and we've got these are just some pecans that I chopped up, smashed up a little bit to put over the top. We're just gonna do the finishing moves on these guys. So we're gonna take just like a nice spoonful of our glaze, smear them over the top. Just a nice little like smear. Doesn't need to look pretty. The pecans are gonna look pretty for us. Just give them a nice little smear. Definitely don't waste any because it's delicious and it's like just the thing that these need. There we are. And then just a little bit of the crushed pecans over the top. Don't waste any of these either because the crunch is like, the texture that these add is like, it's really important I think to the whole thing. I made them with them in mind. I was originally gonna put them into the scroll, but then I thought it would be really nice to have something like on top of it. I quite like glazed scrolls and stuff like that. I think most people do. I think that's a pretty universal like. I don't think I'm unique in that. And there we go. So, there we have it. Here are our gorgeous custard and apple scrolls with a maple and pecan topping. I'm gonna pull one of these off and I'm gonna eat one. I'm gonna eat one. Look at that, hey? All right, that's a good bite. Oh, that's so good. The maple, like, because it's apple and it's like a sweet thing, you expect there to be cinnamon, but instead you get maple and it's such like a beautiful subversion of your expectations. And the like nice crunchy pecans on top. These are delicious. My God. Thank you so much for watching. I very much hope you got something out of this. Scrolls are a great thing to learn how to make because I think the effortness to deliciousness scale is stacked very heavily in your favor. These are just a couple of ideas. It's literally endless. It is as endless as it could be. You could put anything in a scroll, be it sweet or savory, and you'll probably come up with something quite nice. I like using the instant custard as a base. It's a very easy way to add like an adhesive that's also like sweet, but also transparent enough that you can put just about anything that you want in it. And the cheese and Vegemite scrolls, they might be a bit Australian, but we love them. We love them down here, and I love them too. Thank you so much for watching Bradley's Bakehouse. Subscribe if that's a thing that you feel like doing. We've got some really cool stuff coming up. Have a good day.